Thank you so much for joining us for this information session. Um, my goal is to just share a little bit about Chapin Hall and this program, the application process, and hopefully answer any questions that you may have. Okay, so we are going to dive in. Um, my name is Christine, and what you need to know about me for purposes here is I own a consulting practice where I really lead research and evaluations, primarily in focus on children, youth, and families. Um, and I always bring a culturally responsive and racial equity perspective to that work. And for this call, you should know that I'm an Equity First Fellow here at Chapin Hall. And importantly, I'm the director of this program that we'll be talking about. So that means that I'm kind of the main facilitator with a handful of guest speakers and some Chapin Hall staff that will be joining, but you'll be hearing and seeing a lot of me. So I wanted to just make sure you knew my background. Um, but it's not
Christine, I'm
just,
so sorry. Could you just be a bit louder? I don't know about everybody else, but you're so faint for me. I'd
okay, sure.
appreciate it if you could just use your outside voice, maybe.
I apologize, everyone. Hopefully, you heard, if not read, a little bit of my background just now as I was just doing introductions, but this is the important part anyway. So, this is a background on Chapin Hall as an organization, wanting you to know that this is an applied research and policy center, which really has three focus areas around eliminating the need for long term foster care, ending youth homelessness, and strengthening families and communities. And that happens across the various types of projects and programs. So, Chapin Hall staff are working in partnership with nonprofits and foundations and government to really um, scale evidence-based policies, elevate community-driven solutions, but do so by always centering equity in that work. So wanting to just do a brief introduction to who Chapin Hall is as an organization. But you're here because you wanted to hear more about this Summer Associates program. And just as way of background, why we are even established a program of this sort is really because at its core, Chapin Hall was founded to try to address systemic inequities. And in so doing, really understands the importance of who is doing the research or who is doing those evaluations, who is doing the work matters a lot, right? So we know that communities that are most impacted really benefit when the researchers are coming from diverse backgrounds and diverse lived experiences. And this program in particular really just wants to elevate that although you are attaining your PhD, um, a career in academia is not the only choice once you have that doctorate. We wanted you to have exposure to what would it look like to work in a more applied setting where we kind of marry research and policy in our work. But better than I can ever explain in the background of Chapin Hall, I wanted to share a brief video with you. Some of you may have seen this if you went through the application process already, but I'm going to stop sharing this slide deck. Wow, look at all these squares. Welcome, everybody. And I'm going to share the video clip. So bear with me. I'm going to make sure I share this with sound. I have it queued up here. And someone will just give me a thumbs up when I start playing that you can actually hear it and see it. That would be fantastic. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Trey. All right.
For 40 years, Chapin Hall has been fulfilling a unique mission to develop and apply evidence that will improve the lives of families and their communities. In that work, we have documented persistent racial inequities, but describing the problem isn't enough. We regularly challenge ourselves and our partners to develop and use data and evidence not only to inform an understanding of inequity, but also to lift up the assets of marginalized communities and to build new policies that promote family and community resilience. We also know that research is shaped by who established the research questions. how they collect the data, and what perspectives they bring to frame the results. Too often, those conducting the research are not the same race as those who are disproportionately involved with public systems. To expand the pool of researchers who are informed by life experiences, Chapin Hall launched the Equity First Summer Associates Program for PhD students. This program allows scholars to hone their skills in applying racial equity principles to their work while building community with each other. 8 associates completed the program in 2024.
What really drew me to the program was the opportunity to learn more formally how to translate my work in a way that is actionable, that can bring about change in real time.
I want to be a person that incorporates equity in all of the work that I do. I want to make sure that I'm working with communities and the work that Chapin is doing reflects what means most to me.
Looking back on the last 6 weeks, I have really gotten an opportunity to see what it means to be in the field, to have real examples. At Chapin Hall, I've heard from just every employee, who's presented for us, who's spoken to us, we've had the opportunity to interact with, everywhere from the top go down, have much of the same messaging, understanding the long-term goals, and really seem to have a long-term plan behind this that is many years deep, that doesn't expect just like change in an instant.
So what drew me to the program? I really wanted a time frame where I could just really focus on equity and as like a foundation piece to build more knowledge and skills and learn from others that have been incorporating equity into their work. I felt like I got more information that I could apply right away to my work, directly into my dissertation work and my program, and ideas on how I could carry the work forward.
Chapin Hall is committed to supporting and hiring researchers who are representative of the populations they are researching. Together, we apply a unique combination of rigorous research and policy expertise to create expedited solutions that meet family needs. Learn more at chapinhall.org/equityassociates.
Okay, thank you for hearing and listening to that video. I'm going to go back to sharing my slide deck, but it's really wonderful to see you all here in the boxes. I can't see you all when I share my slides. Here we go. Okay, hopefully you're seeing the slides again, right? Okay. So I wanted to share a little bit about just how this Equity First Summer Associates program is going to be structured. You just heard from a couple of the last year scholars. So last year was the inaugural year. 2024 was the first cohort. And hopefully they elevated a little bit about their experience. But what you may have read already as we looked at application materials is that we're really striving to have a hybrid model. And that means it's a combination of both in-person as well as virtual, as well as some unstructured on your own time in this work, right? So there's going to be scheduled weekly virtual calls. We're going to have some content delivery, right? Obviously, we're going to be sharing information. But we also are intentional about having a cohort, right? That's why we are just not doing this as a one-person internship for this summer. It's an associate's program of a cohort. So it's important that we really establish that cohort so that you can have some peer learning opportunities. So we're also going to have weekly time set aside that's specific around cohort building time. And then there'll also be office hours, right? So we want to make sure that every week there's an opportunity to dive a little deeper. So there'll be office hours. But then there's a bunch of time that's also just unstructured, right? So you will be having independent study time. Obviously, your participation is really what's going to help you in your own development and growth here, right? You get out what you put into it. So your participation is important. And then there's going to be a place of just kind of keeping your own reflection journal so that you're really able to process some of the content. So I'll dive a little deeper into how the 8 weeks are planned out on this next slide. So this is an 8 week model, right? The very first and the very last week are in-person sessions, and then the 6 weeks in between are virtual. So you'll see the virtual weeks, and those are the dates in front of you there. We starting um, online, it starts the week of June 9th and ends the week of July 14th. The sessions will be every Monday and Wednesday from 10 to 12. But we really are considering how we divvy up that time. So on Mondays, will be portion of the time, we'll always bring in a Chapin Hall staff member. We think it's really important to give you exposure to all the different ways and shapes of people that work at Chapin Hall. They are doing some amazing projects, and I think just having a spotlight where they can come in, where you can ask questions from both the research angle, policy angle, and how they intersect that as they're thinking about integrating equity. No better way than to have them speak for themselves. So we will always have a Chapin Hall staff person spotlighted. They will come and share for a portion of that Monday, and the rest of the time will be content delivery. That doesn't mean I talk at you for the rest of the time. It's still going to be interactive. You'll still have things to do and work on and breakouts and activities, but it is about making sure that we're giving you that toolkit, that tool belt that you came for, right? To build your chops in this field. On Wednesdays from 10 to 12, we're always going to have a guest speaker come in. So I have lots of colleagues in this space of thinking about culturally responsive and I acknowledge that I am not expert in all things. And you don't only need to hear from me. So I'm grateful that several individuals will be sharing their talents and expertise with you across those 6 weeks virtually to bring probably something I don't have expertise in, but think it's important for you to know as well. And on Wednesdays is also where we'll do some of our cohort activities. So the guest speaker will speak for part of the time, and that's again, they won't just talk at you. That is not what they sign up for. They know that when they agree. So they'll have some content delivery with you and some activity with you, but we'll also use a portion of our time on Wednesdays to make sure that we are intentionally doing just some team building work for the selected participants, all of the associates. So that's how the virtual time works. Um, then we also, I said we'll have 2 times that you are coming in person. On June 6th, we're going to come to a space in Chicago where we will have an orientation. And you'll hear more about the agenda, but that's a full day of in-person meet and greet. I think it's a great way to start off since the rest of the weeks are going to be virtual to at least kind of like see what each other looks like outside of our squares. And then July 22nd is the last day of this program, and that'll be another in-person meeting, full day meeting in Chicago, where you will be presenting what we'll talk about next, your capstone project. And we'll also, build out a full agenda for that day. But a big chunk of the day is about you sharing back a presentation. So speaking of this capstone project, this actually came about um, as a recommendation from cohort 1, our inaugural cohort, as we really tried to listen and learn of what worked well and what didn't. What you're seeing here is a lot of lessons learned, right? Things they said, it would have been really nice if we had this one capstone project at the end of the year. We had another approach last year, but this year we're integrating what they really suggested would have worked well. So you'll be given 4 options of different types of capstone projects that you can do. You'll select one at the start of the 8 weeks, and you have periodic time, that unstructured time, those office hours, to cohort time to work on your project. It's individual. Each one of you will do one. It's not across the whole cohort doing one project. Each person will do one. And then you'll have an opportunity, like I said, at the final meeting on the 22nd of July to present capstone project to our cohort and show off your stuff. It's really a way of implementing all the principles and all the content that you're learning into a project, right? Better to just, have a chance to actually get your sleeves rolled up and try it out instead of just being kind of a passive learner. We really want you to put it into practice. So that'll be your opportunity in the capstone project. Um, I will set aside Thursdays and Fridays, a chunk of time on both days, where you will sign up for a 30-minute office hour meeting. So once a week, you decide, we'll get a calendar going and you can say Thursdays at 10 is going to be my time. And it can change the following week, right? You don't have to commit to that. But you'll have a chunk of time to choose from. You'll select the window. And in those 30 minutes, we will work on a couple of things. We're going to work on how you're developing your own personal equity principles for yourself based on what you're learning, right? Which one of these are really resonating for you? Let's dive deeper in that. You'll be able to ask questions, of course, about any of the content that was delivered that week and get guidance as you're going along on your capstone project. So we'll structure the time how you need it to be, but you will have a 30-minute weekly check-in with me. Again, you set the time on Thursdays or Fridays. Oh, sorry, I think I went too fast there. And then as I said, there'll be some unstructured time, and that's throughout. So you'll be given some, I don't call it like homework at all, but I will give some readings that I think are really important for this work that are just like foundational. So you'll see some assignments. So probably a couple of videos I may ask you to watch and reflect on. There may be one or two activities that you're going to do outside. We'll do activities as a group as well, but I may ask you to do one or two things outside during that week. And then I'll ask you to keep a reflection journal. Again, for yourself, I think it's really important to be documenting, asking those questions, because we are going to work on your own personal equity principles. And part of that's going to be teased out of what you're reflecting on in that journal. So that's just a couple of the things that are going to be happening in the unstructured window. So all in all, over these 8 weeks, this is what it will look like. And we think this is approximately about 30 hours a week, right? In terms of your time commitment. You know about the 6 weeks of virtual 2-hour Zoom calls, that's kind of set in stone. You know about the 2 days in person, that's set in stone. The weekly 30-minute check-ins, also set in stone. The capstone project is going to take some time, but that's on your own time and how you figure that out, as well as the independent assignments and the work that you're doing. We'll probably check in on those weekly, so you can't really wait till the end to get those done. But again, how you structure that time outside of the classroom is up to you. Okay. So the content, what are we covering, right? We are going to do a little bit of historical context about this here, US of A, and our history of, of racism and systemic inequities. So there will be some historical context. We will do a value proposition. Why do we even need to do this? You may have to make the case to others of what is the importance of a culturally responsive racial equity perspective. And I want you to be ready with a response. So we are going to talk about what is the value of doing this? If I had to make this case to someone else, we're going to break our work into the 5 stages of research and evaluation and make sure that you're thoughtful about how do I embed culturally responsive and racial equity across each stage of a research project, whether I am just setting out and designing it, if I'm doing data collection, if I'm at data analysis, if I'm at dissemination, whichever stage that you are in your research. And this is really intentional because many of you will be at different stages of your dissertation process when you come to this program. And as you heard from some of the cohort last year, being able to immediately implement in the proposal stage, if that's where you are in your dissertation, or if you are already collecting data, if you're analyzing data, I want this to be immediately applicable, but I also want to leave you with, doesn't matter where you are in research, there's still a way to integrate this perspective. And so I want you to walk away with a real tool belt of saying, I'm just at data collection. Is there a way for me to be thinking about racial equity now? And I'll say, yeah, there definitely is. Let's talk about it. So the content is going to be divvied up across the stages so that you are leaving with an understanding of that. We're going to have to do some unlearning in this program, right? We're going to have to challenge the way we've been taught about rigor about evidence, about what is credible, what is valid, and really question some of the ideologies that we're learning in our program. So we're going to do some unlearning of what you've learned in this program as well. There's a lot of tools and resources available online and written up in articles, in gray literature, white papers, peer-reviewed journals. I really want to highlight for you racial equity tools that I think are good tools, that I think are useful tools. And so we will spend some time combing through some of the resources that are available out there on the web and make sure that you're really leaving with these are ones that I can implement and use right away. I want to talk about what it's like to have conversations with funders. When you graduate and you are doing research independently and you are responding to a request for proposal, if you're responding to a funding opportunity announcement from the federal government, when you are dealing with philanthropy, what are the conversations you're having about how you're going to bring this unique perspective to whatever the research question is that you're trying to address? One thing they don't teach you in PhD programs is often about project management and budgeting. And that's really critical when you're on a project and you're trying to set out how do I staff this project? How do I think about the research assistants and the analysts and the scientists that I need to really bring this project to fruition? So I do want to just tip our toes into what it looks like to do project management and budgeting. Um, and then lastly, and this isn't an exhaustive list by any means, but just to highlight some of the things for you. Um, the last one I'll cover here is just around equitable communication guidelines. We talk about equity in both our process of how we do our work, as well as the outcomes we're trying to get to. We want to get to equity in our outcomes for participants or youth or families, but it's also how we communicate. What is the language that we're using? Language matters. So I do want to share about equitable communication guidelines. Okay. Hopefully this is still sounding interesting and everything that you're hoping to hear, but in case it's not, highlighting for you what you're getting out of this, right? First, I think it's really important that we don't do our work in isolation. So I want you to really leave with a cohort of individuals that are also committed to this approach and to thinking about advancing racial equity, thinking about um, disrupting systemic inequities, right? And so in our cohort approach, it's really intentional that you're going to develop those relationships that will be beyond this particular 8-week summer. Understanding and applying these principles. So you'll have an opportunity to just both learn the content. Again, Capstone Project is going to give you a way to implement principles and apply what you're learning. I want you to leave with a toolkit of both resources that are available to do this work and a skill set. How are you bringing that critical mindset and that interrogating, questioning what's in front of you? How are you bringing that skill set to the work? And we're housed at Chapin Hall because we want you to see what would it look like to do this in an applied research environment. Obviously, with a PhD, you're well equipped to work inside of academia. We want to give you exposure to listening to the Chapin Hall staff spotlights and understanding the vast ways that you can work in this particular environment that integrates research and policy and leads with equity, right? So those are some of the highlights that I think you will be walking away with your participation. Obviously, there is a financial stipend that's available to you for participation in this program, which, as we're thinking about 8 weeks of your summer, we really want to make sure that we show you that we value participation, right? And so a generous stipend is also offered as part of your participation. So our applicants eligibility, we're looking for folks who are currently in their doctoral program. It really doesn't matter that you are, you've done all of your, that you've already proposed or that you're already collecting data, like where you are, we're looking for a variety. So we want you to maybe have completed some of your course of study, right? So like 2 years of this, like kind of getting your content, right? So you are steeped in your content at this point, but where you are in that dissertating process, it can be varied. Um, we're looking for folks that, as we talk about wanting to have diverse lived experience, we're looking for folks who are bringing that to the table in the conversation, right? That you have experience with barriers due to racial discrimination, because that's the richness of this group and the contribution you're making as you think about the application of the work. So that's one of our eligibilities or our criteria. We want folks that are interested in applying their work, right? You are thinking about equity, you're thinking about social justice as you go on, you are open to thinking outside of traditional academic professional job, and you're interested in being open-minded to where else can I apply my scholarship in my work. And lastly, because of where we're situated and our in-person requirements and Cape House commitment to its community, we're looking for those that are Chicago-based. So that's our who would apply process. We tried to keep it fairly simple. We know that you're all great writers because you're in PhD programs, right? So we didn't want to make this write a huge application for us. We want a brief narrative. We're actually asking for a video so that we can just hear and learn about who you are. We trust that you're a good writer, so we don't need you to write this whole thing out. So short video, brief narrative, upload your CV. Everything is available online through a really quick and easy process. We opened applications in December. Our deadline is February 14th. Our process at that point, we will be making selections of finalists, and those selected individuals will be contacted to do a virtual interview with our hopes of narrowing it down to about 5 or so associates that we will select to be part of our summer cohort. And then we will make those announcements of who has been selected at the end of March. So that is the process going forward. And I think that's my last slide. I'm going to stop sharing unless you want to see a particular slide again, and open the floor for questions. What can I answer for you um, as you're thinking about this application, or if you have any questions about the content? I'm happy to answer any and all the questions to the extent that I can. So, anything? Oh, eligibility question. Thank you. Do we have to be at a Chicago-based university? Wait, let me open it. Looks like there's more. I live in Chicago, but I'm working remotely during the dissertation stage and getting my degree from an institution outside the state. Where are you, Sarah? What university are you with?
Hi, I'm at the University of Michigan.
Okay.
But since I'm like on fellowship and don't need to be on campus, I live in Chicago because my family's based here.
Yeah, I think that's oh, oh, that's another question. Elizabeth, did you want to answer that? That's
Sure, yes. So we want to be clear that, as
Mm.
Christine said, we're trying to build a community in kind of a geographically denser environment so people can
Mhm.
find one another, Sarah. So I
Mhm.
appreciate that you're in Chicago. We do have that flexibility for people who are studying outside of Chicago, but are committed to the Chicago
Mhm.
area. Our funder is actually a Chicago-based funder who really asked us to try to attract and these kinds of opportunities for scholars in the Chicago area, which is another reason that we're promoting that. But I would be flexible with you living in Michigan and
Or I live in Chicago.
I'm sorry,
But
I
yeah,
misspoke,
yeah,
Sarah.
yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
sorry. I heard you say you live in
Yeah.
Chicago. I
Okay.
apologize. Yes, we'd be flexible there, but not flexible for folks who are studying and living in, say, California.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the question, Sarah. I see a couple more in the chat, so I'll just keep reading. Um, Larissa asks, can you give us an idea of what kind of lived experience narrative you expect? How much detail should we include, especially if we have multiple lived experiences? And then there's a second part. Let me answer the first part of the question. First things first. Um, I say that it's a brief narrative and it's a brief video that we're asking for. So I would, if I were you, I would just highlight what feels most relevant and what feels most prominent and what feels most integral to who you are and what has shaped you, rather than trying to give us, a litany of all the things, right? So we are really interested in barriers that may have been experienced in your career so far, in your educational pursuits such thus far, in in your life experiences that have been truly impacted, as you can define it, by racial inequities or by discrimination based on that identity. And so I would spend time in the brief video and in the brief narrative highlighting those lived experiences that you feel shaped how you think because of what you experienced. And and I also encourage you to be as vulnerable as you feel comfortable being vulnerable, right? So please do not feel obligated to share anything that feels too personal. We are not in the space of trying to trigger and re-traumatize anyone. That is not the intent. But to give us a flavor as we read the applicants, as we view the videos of who you are and what you think you uniquely bring. We are looking to have a diversity of perspective and experiences in the room. So I'd be just interested in sharing that. So hope that helps. There was a second part of the question. Let me scroll back up here. Will independent projects be with different organizations? So I think you're talking about the Capstone project, and not necessarily. So you will see from the four options that will be presented to you that um, that could be an option, but I really want it is still time limited, right? So if you already have a relationship with a different organization and you feel the project can be immediately applicable to that, that would be fine. But I wouldn't be asking folks to do the work that's necessary to really establish authentic relationship with a community organization for the purpose of this 8-week project, right? I want it to be authentic, and sometimes just trying to establish a relationship with a community partner for the purposes of this would feel very kind of extractive, just kind of like flying in, I need this from you, and then I'm flying back out. Thanks. I don't want that. So I would only encourage that if you already have a pre-existing community relationship and the Capstone project feels immediately applicable to that, it's definitely not necessary, as you will see when you see the options, to have to partner with another organization to do it. I hope that answers that. So the next question was about the context of the 3-minute equity video. For us, that's kind of what is your why kind of video? Like, why do you want to do this? And that is incorporating your lived experiences. It is incorporating what you want to do beyond this, right? We're interested in hearing if you've already been thinking outside of academia, what is it that you're thinking about doing, right? How do you want to apply that doctorate? How are you thinking about social justice and equity and applying equity in your work beyond graduation? So it's 3 minutes. It's not a whole lot of time, and that's intentional. Like I know folks think, "Oh my goodness, I was still talking after 3 minutes." We learned that last year, but I think that if you can say it in that nugget and give us a flavor, that's plenty. We will, for those that are selected, you will have a 30-minute interview, and in that time, we will be able to hear more, ask more questions. So they're like integral parts in your 3 minutes, and know that when you're selected for a virtual interview, you'll have more opportunity to share longer. The application link, oh, was that it? Someone, I think we just put it in the chat there. So that's right there for you. Website, second screen. Okay. 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 Katarina, what tangible products will I walk away with to continue doing equitable and actionable work? You mentioned the toolkit. I'm wondering if there are additional products. I'll answer that part first. 'Cause I think the second question is going someplace else around mentorship. Um, so tangible products. One, I think will be your capstone project. Two, I think will be your personal equity plan, which will be the principles we're working on in the office hours and in your unstructured time. Three, I think would be your reflection journal. Again, that's on you of how much you're reflecting and how much you're putting into your journal. There'll be some, scripted tasks to actually do in the journal, but a lot of it is on your own. So I think that is possible tangible product depending on how much you give to it, right? I tell you, you get out what you put in. So I can't really speak to the journal depending on what you give it. I know from last year's cohort, many did say that was a really helpful to have their little side notebook where they jotted down things that were useful in their dissertation that maybe they weren't at that stage yet, but they're like, I want to hold on to this for later. Um, all of the sessions are recorded, and so you'll have as I think about a tangible product, you'll have options to review the content. Um, if if that counts as our product, we will be going over several of the um, tools and resources that are available online for how to implement equity at the data collection stage or how to implement it at a data analysis stage. And so you will be walking away with a resource list of tools that I can use at different stages of the research process. So those are the ones that come to mind immediately. I hope that helps answer that. Katarina, please stop if you have more questions, but I think that's a start to answering that. In
Christine,
terms of
Sarah Kim
oh,
has had her hand up for a little while versus using the chat.
sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no worries. Thanks, Elizabeth. I thank you. First of all, thanks so much for doing this presentation. It's been very helpful. I'm trying to figure out, if this is a good fit for me. And so I was wondering if you could share a bit about some of the research backgrounds of some of the former summer fellows, and what made them a good fit for the program.
Wow. I can tell you that we had a really, are you hearing? I can tell you that I had a really hard time selecting the cohort last year, right? We had amazing applicants. Um, so research backgrounds, let me think now, we had one that was into environmental racism, environmental justice. And so he was um, what was the kind? I'm blanking on the specifics, but oh, it was about her dissertation topic was around an alternative to burials. So instead of like burying humans in coffins underground, what are some environmental friendly options for burials? It was quite interesting. Um, we had another who was looking at he's more in like the medical side of things. And so he was really interested in health inequities. We had another who was interested in juvenile, formerly incarcerated girls and thinking about, so like juvenile justice issues. Too. Another gentleman was also in juvenile justice and he was a mix of law and PhD. Um, so they had varied backgrounds in terms of their content area, and they were also in various stages. We had one that was dissertating that August. We had one that was ready to dissertate. I think she dissertated in December or January. We had one who had just finished her comprehensive exams. So they were in various places and stages of their doctoral program. But they were good fits for me because of again, what they brought to the table in that very diverse lived experience and how they were able to talk about what they wanted to do next. Um, and then I think we're looking for folks that are like eager to participate because the cohort is only good if everyone is really, we're looking for a good cohort as well, right? A good mix of individuals to share their backgrounds. I hope that answers Sarah. Mentorship was a question in the chat. In terms of, are there additional opportunities once the program ends to continue connection and mentorship? Yes. So the alumni from our first cohort is very interested in connecting with the new cohort because they were the inaugural. So I think there'll be opportunities to connect with them. And then you'll be meeting Chapin Hall staff across each week, who anyone who's coming in as a spotlight is also very willing to kind of establish relationship and talk informally outside of the time that they're meeting because they're really invested in this program. Otherwise, they wouldn't come to talk to us, right? So they are also would be opportunities to have fellowship and meet with those individuals. Last year, we also put together like a small profile book of other Chapin Hall staff so that you can also just kind of thumb through and say, this person is really interested in field I'm interested in. I'm going to follow up with them and make connection. So I know some people established kind of an informal mentorship or informal conversations with Chapin Hall staff last year, as well as our guest speakers. They'll probably also be really willing to volunteer to do that. I know they did last year. Okay. With students based in the Great Lakes area, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, be encouraged to apply, or is it just limited to Chicago area since the funder is asking for it? I'm going to keep punting. Oh, I think we already have an answer. Yes, we have flexibility for the greater area. Please know that we're not reimbursing for travel to the in-person meetings. Okay, sounds like that was asked and answered. Will we have access to this recording? Yes, live and recording. Okay. It was mentioned that the stage of dissertation work can be variable between candidates. Are you looking for candidates from specific academic disciplines or with particular dissertation focuses? No. Is the short answer to that, Kendall. Not necessarily. I mean, I think we tend to lean social science, but I think I want folks to make sure this is a good fit for you too, right? So if what we're talking about in terms of the content doesn't feel immediately applicable, I don't know if this is, I want you to also feel it's a good fit. So happy to, if we get to that stage, just talk more about content and you can let me know. Like, I feel like I can actually use this in the research I'll be doing for my dissertation or beyond or not, right? I'm not probably the best person to answer that. Is in computer science and I'm interested in working on these new fields. Can I still apply for this? I wouldn't say hard no. I've already said that we're not saying no to any particular topical interest, but I would want you to consider, is this content, as we're thinking about it, going to be applicable for you? I want it to feel practical. You're spending 8 weeks of your summer with us. I don't want it to feel like this is not applicable. So I don't know that I have the best answer for that one, but I think that's an individual choice. More information about the funder of this program and Chapin Hall in general. Wondering if the federal government is providing funding in light of the DEI. Is funding reduced this year since the participants is reduced to 5 this year versus 8 last year? Okay. Yeah, Elizabeth's reminding me that we're running out of time. Okay, we are running out of time. We are going to post the slides.
I can answer
Okay.
that one very quickly. This week, the message that was issued from the Office of Management and Budget, we reached out to each of our PIs that have a federal direct grant, a subrecipient, or a contract. That's not the bulk of our work at Chapin Hall. It's probably 15 to 20% of our work, direct, sub, or contract through another entity to do a particular slice of their direct grant. We are not, most of our work is with state and local governments and funded by state and local governments as well as foundations. That is not why the number is reduced from 5 to 8. It depends on our ability to get foundations to support the program because we are, predominantly project funded and that's the resources we use to pay staff. So having this program is kind of outside our general operating budget, so we're trying to attract funders to it. We're not overly worried about our agendas with our state and local governments who are already committed to work that they've identified in terms of transformation opportunities. So I'll leave it to Christine to wrap us up.
Great. Well, I just read through the chat and it looks like most of the questions were answered. Applications close on February 14th. So I just encourage you to go to the link and submit an application if you remain interested. I look forward to reading and viewing these applications, and you will be contacted if you're selected to advance to a final